Welcome one and all to the second Riftlab Trials, the last event before the pre-release officially begins. This tournament, of course, brings to a close the first full season of the Riftlab League. My name is Counter, joined by NLC caster Initialize, and by an MTG creator who's been doing Riftbound content, is a caster and player, and has been described as the greatest Annie player of all time. Anu, welcome you both to the stream.
How's it going? How's it going?
Look, I'm gonna Anu. I've got to raise a slight complaint here, Counterfeit, because I get this NLC cast, and then we go on this massive diatribe about Anu's incredible, creative MTG Riftbound history.
I asked you for an intro coming in, you're like, anything's fine.
Just go to Initialize. Yeah, okay, this is true. I trusted you.
This guy's he's not an MTG caster. He's just Initialize. Sam Hapgood. Who's that guy? Well, Initialize, tell you what, why don't you bet us back on the rails by talking a little bit about what our huge quantity of players are actually playing for across the second trials.
And we've actually got some really cool prizes for not having a prize pool. There are some wonderful things you could be winning here. First place, you're getting a custom 1-of-1 playmat. Same for second as well. You get those really cool decals. Then also keep a little note on those journals you'll be getting, which are special edition crafted as well. Again, you get a special one for first, special one for second. You also get a digital variant as well, which is really, really cool. And the thing that actually I think is super awesome is, you'll actually get a special, unique border for the Piltover Archive website. You can flex on the community on the website, which I think is absolutely dope. And everyone else who is competing as well will indeed get a digital copy, I apologize, of the Codex of the Arcane as well. So actually, a lot of really cool things on the line here. I personally think those profile picture borders are actually just a really nice touch, especially then when you get the physical bonuses on top. Anything on there, gents, that you are particularly favoring if you were in this tournament playing?
Yeah, the Codex journals are actually super sweet. I do really like the designing on them. Anything that's like Riftbound branded honestly just has my heart at this point. And I'm hoping to get one of those too, because using that just like to keep track of life and notes and things like that, gonna be really cool to have specifically that Codex journal.
Well, let's kind of bring everything together then. Again, we've got across this event 2 different days of competition, 7 rounds of Swiss overall, 5 of those taking place today, and then the top 8 tomorrow, where it moves to single elimination. So gentlemen, let's start talking about what the decks we're going to be seeing. Of course, Kaiser, Yi have been absolutely everywhere. I want to hear about something else, Initialize.
Look, we've all heard the rumors coming out of China. Anu will be chatting about that, worry not. But what we've had here in Rift Labs is Darius. But Darius with baited hook. And anybody who has not seen this, it's very silly tech, guys. You can basically keep hunting through your deck for new cards to drop by sacking creatures on the board. It's ridiculous. And there's one player in particular we need to keep our eyes on, and that's Ganstrax, who, as I understand it, is 16-0. Undefeated so far in Rift Labs, which is mental. And I mean, like, Anu, have we actually seen anyone else even get close to Ganstrax in terms of his dominance on that Darius?
No, that's kind of crazy to me too. I mean, 16-0 against like a field of all the best players in the Riftbound community is what really just makes me. I like not even like one loss. Over the course of the games that we've seen with Ganstrax, also has just played really, really intelligently, really well. This Darius archetype is something that I'm pretty excited about as well. But it looks like we're going to be moving on to our first deck list here, and that is Volibear by X0TCG. And this is an archetype we don't actually get to see very often. Volibear's passive ability lets you ramp if you play a mighty unit, so you're going to see a lot of like beefy boys in this deck list. The card that ties everything together here is Dazzling Aurora, and that's a card that has caused a lot of controversy in the community. We'll see if it's a metagame crusher here this weekend. But let's take a look at the other deck list too and see what Volibear is going to be playing against in round number 1.
Yeah, Initialize, this is a real Dave versus Goliath. We saw in the chat, this is what people are here for. We've got giant bears on one side, we've got tiny yawls on the other. Sam, this is the thing that legends are made of here in round 1.
Whatever Riot have been putting in the water recently, it has been TEEMO flavored. He's turning up into XKO and looks like a monster there as well. We've got him here in our first matchup of the Rift Labs as well. And very different look to the Volibear. A lot cheaper cards, playing around that hidden mechanic as well. You're not having to deal with specific runes to get things out. You can just standard exhaust runes to play with those kind of trap cards, play with some of that control. Keep your eyes on Guerrilla Warfare and a couple of those other cards you can just hide out and do some really silly things with. I'm sure you've got some ideas on this one as well, Anu. Yes, you've got things like the Thousand Tail Watcher. Yes, you've got some finishes like the Dr. Mundo, which are a bit pricier, beefier boys. But for me, it is that kind of hidden mechanic that should make that draft and that deck a lot more fun.
Yeah, we're going to see, in terms of like the matchup heads up here, I do think that Volibear is going to be looking to play more of the controlling role. It's going to take some time to get that deck online and operational. Your spells are very expensive, and in the meantime, you're going to be spending...
get that, yeah.
Yeah, you need to get there, right? So TEEMO is going to be focusing on leveraging the Bandle Tree this game against Aspirant's Climb to just get a lot of hidden value out there, generate cheap points and things like that. And then hopefully, by the time we get to... when Volibear is Auroraing units into play, we'll have all of our traps and tricks online to get the last few points that we need.
There's a little bit of revision. Aspirant's Climb will be increasing the points needed to win the game by 1. So Sam, as we've already talked about, as we've already been alluding to, the top end here for the Volibear deck is absolutely ridiculous. Looking at the hands, of course, we've got our mulligans coming in early on. Of course, we don't want to necessarily be drawing the Dazzling Aurora straight away, but we do need to make sure one of those three comes out at the right time.
I completely agree, and actually I think with the Aspirant's Climb as well, you actually do buy yourself that extra bit of time to ramp in, because again, the later the game goes, the more runes you have, the more of those big beefy boys you can drop on the board, the better, and just making sure the point total, that ceiling's a little higher, will matter a lot. I am actually be really interested to see how the Bandle is going to work, Bandle City is going to work out, because more hiding for TEEMO decks early on gets really obnoxious, because the amount of just like extra surprises you can spring on people, especially for this poor Volibear that maybe is going to need to play it that little bit slower, could get quite frustrating early on.
Yeah, and looking at the TEEMO deck list here too, there are actually just a number of hidden card options that we can play. There's the two types of TEEMOs, Strategist and Scout. There's Blast Cone Fae, Consult the Past, and Fight or Flight, all of which are just really, really, really strong hidden cards. So you're right, an early advantage here is going to be absolutely important for the TEEMO player to secure. And looks like we're rolling the dice as who goes first. I do think it's very important this round. We'll see the play draw. I think whoever goes first, it's going to definitely impact the course of the game, because, just even an extra turn to ramp, or even an extra turn to score a point on turns like, 2 or 3, whatever. Very, very important here for the TEEMO player.
Well, I mean, since we're waiting a few more seconds for the beginning of the match to get on the way, do want to hit up on some of the options, particularly the options which are in hand already for Neadle. The Ember Monk, one which is drawing my eye, particularly getting empowered from playing the cards from hidden. I like to see that we've got a little bit more direct fight capability in here, at least until, of course, the big hitters come in.
Yeah, I think looking at the TEEMO hand here, I would probably ship back the Mundos. It's kind of interesting we're deciding to keep it. But the rest of the hand seems pretty solid and lets you, just get on the board as fast as turn 1.
Yeah, I was wondering about whether they keep the Mundo or not, because you're right, I think that's a very pricey card to keep in hand as a deck that theoretically is going to want to play a little faster, but I guess it's kind of insurance against the Volibear, who is going to be looking for those big creatures. At least this way, you've got something in hand that can potentially match some of those bigger drops. And when you've already got the TEEMO in hand, when you've got the Ember Monk in hand, maybe you aren't feeling quite as pressured to drop the higher cost card.
And of course, we've got this... Oh, please.
Good news is that you will have time to get to the stage where you're deploying, Mundo, and I think that's maybe the actual reason that you can afford to keep it in your hand. There are notably 2 copies, so even if we recycle this one in our hand, we could potentially get to the other copy that's in the deck.
Risky though, especially when I suppose there is a bit of draw in here, but it's not necessarily like you're running the Dazzling Aurora either, where you can just like go hunting through your deck for something to drop. So and you're not beta turking either, so I'm not sure how easy it is to kind of go rummaging through your deck for the Mundo in this case. So I can sort of see, well, look, there's only 2 copies in here, holding it in hand maybe makes some sense, but kind of getting our first set of drops coming on through already. There comes that big old dragon for Volibear as well.
Yeah, that's coming in off the back of a Mobilize straight into the Scorcher. We can see that the start here for X0TCG, dramatically stronger. Not ideal to be putting out this unhidden version of our TEEMO Scout. I mean, we've at least got some good stuff in hand to back him up, but already it feels like XO is really off to the races.
Yeah, I mean, turn 1 ramp, turn 2 ramp is exactly where you want to be. Looking at the follow-up play on the next turn, we're going to have 8 energy total.
Oh, yeah.
Caldegrin, don't have access to that yet. And even the Sky Splitter, you know, that one actually could be pretty good against the hidden, the Ember Monk that's just come into the Bandle Tree. The next turn, we'll see how it goes for Exo, because we've got great momentum. We just need to keep it going.
And again, obviously, Sky Splitter with that ability to just reduces cost by having big creatures on the board. The synergy's obvious, guys. You see why it's working the way it is. There's that hidden card we were talking about. And a second one, because it's Bandle City, and that way you can make sure there are surprises galore for poor old TCG to manage.
It does always feel like you're going to be threading the needle here, pun fully intended for Neadle, to be able to keep up any kind of presence now that we've got the Scorcher out. We can see in hand, we've got some big hitters. A category in the Infernal is waiting, to come down in force. We've got another Mobilize in there as well. It feels like the window opportunity for Neadle to really get any kind of presence here is very limited.
Gents, I may have made a mistake here in that I didn't see what Neadle put face down. I have no idea. I didn't remember what was in hand, so I'm kind of having to remember. I am in the position right now of X0TCG, terrified of what those cards are, because I can't remember. And I just wanted you to know that I don't know, and therefore running by the seat of my pants.
Well, one thing
I think that's actually kind of one of the benefits to playing TEEMO as well, is because you have such a wide variety of options that you can play hidden. No other deck has access to that, and that always makes it kind of a guessing game. And if you guess wrong, it could swing the game dramatically in either direction.
It's interesting to see that Exo deciding not to actually go in and try and go after the Bandle Tree with all those hidden cards. But we've still got Anivia in play, one of the ones which we haven't seen a tremendous amount of more recently with her AoE. So perhaps for the time being, just Neadle's going to be able to stay ahead and not have to deal directly with the fighting.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting here. With double hidden card, your Ember Monk is telegraphing at least 8 might.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. But with Anivia's, damage ability, I mean, you might actually just be able to power through it. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I'm not even necessarily sure if you contest in this spot here. Maybe you just keep Anivia back and keep developing rather than just go in and attack on this next turn. The more I think about it, the more I think just playing slowly makes sense, because it's, we're going into turn 4. You've got great energy already. Like, that's set up. So what's the rush, right? We'll just keep turtling until we can really have our indestructible late game.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, X0TCG is really not in a rush. They've already got they've got themselves the Blazing Scorcher on the other board. Yes, you're giving up a couple points here, but again, look what's in hand. You've got double Cardigan the Infernal. Like, if you get a couple of those down, once you've got some of your couple of your extra creators, pick that triple. You're absolutely right. The draw is going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, there's just no way to be able to, get ahead of Exo in terms of raw resources here. I mean, at least, you're ahead on points, but I'm really curious. I mean, we've still got some, some of the pieces still to play. I was hoping we might even see, from TEEMO's side of things, the Nocturne being brought out from before when they were doing a little bit of deck searching, but now, it's only going to get more and more pressure for Neadle as more and more stuff arrives, and there we go. You guys talking about it before. We've got immediately the Sky Splitter coming in, the 5 damage. Going to try and force out one of these hidden cards just to keep him alive.
Yeah, this is actually really interesting, because you probably could guess that one of the 2 hidden cards here is a TEEMO. So if Neadle flips the TEEMO over here, this gives the Anivia a really good window to attack in here, use that ability to deal the rest of the damage to kill off the Ember Monk, and then that lines up really well in that Anivia against the other TEEMO, right? So this Sky Splitter coming in for 0 energy with the Anivia back up, this is looking great for Volibear.
Yeah, I'm still looking at the double draw engines in hand, plus some mobilized trumpets, plus everything else. Like, I think this is looking very tricky for Neadle here. I'm like, see if there's anything in hand that might be something of an answer, and I'm not seeing that many routes out from what's in hand at the minute, unless I'm missing a combo.
All right, yeah, I've got a blast cone. Oh boy, yeah, it's not looking ideal. So, all right, I mean, we knew this was coming for Neadle sooner or later. At least it does clear the decks, but this isn't ideal. Of course, the TEEMO deck would love to be able to get set back up there and make sure the Bandle tree is as close and impenetrable as it could be.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's also a really, like, good sign for EXO is that if you look at the last turn that Neadle had, all they did was, like, spend 4 energy to play Consult the Past, draw 2 cards. That's a very weak move. It doesn't develop the board, really. And so that alone might just tell EXO, hey, I can get really aggressive here with my units and my plays, and just take apart whatever Neadle is presenting. They probably don't even have too much if all they can muster up this turn is to play Consult the Past. So, big telegraph there from Needle's side. And now we're also kind of in a tricky situation where, because we hid 2 cards that burned a lot of our runes, so we don't even have access this turn to something like Mundo. I guess we could play the Watcher, but that's not even like that great because we can't accelerate it.
No, I mean, Sam, we talked about before, with the mass amount of draw power in hand, with the extra mobilize as well, we've even got, a few extra answers in place with a challenge. Even going 2 for 1, Neadle, if Neadle can somehow make all of their cards worth 2 of EXO's 1, it still feels like you're just getting further and further behind.
Yeah, and I get a bit nervous for some potential Brazen Buccaneer combos, because if you've got so much draw, there's a world here where you're going to draw enough cards to get the cost reduction by discarding cards, and then just redraw your hand by dropping another Infernal, right? Another Cadrigrin. There we go. Cadrigrin? Cadrigrin.
Yeah.
I think it's the way you pronounce it. I had to think that one through.
Call them Cad to their friends.
Cads, exactly. It's a close people. Friends with Cerberus, just less heads. You know how it is. But that makes me a little nervous. Yes, I think as well, as Anu was kind of pointing out, look, the fact that the board didn't develop, that they had to go for that draw set, suggests that their hand wasn't looking great. If they'd drawn a couple great cards, fine. But it does give you that sense that some blood's in the water, and Volibear has got more than enough rune power here to start really churning through some nasty combos, and I think we're about to see a pretty nasty turn here.
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. I was going to say earlier that maybe the Aspirant's Climb gives Neadle a little bit of time to breathe and set up and, come up with some sort of strategy to close out here. But, just playing the TEEMO this turn, not very strong. And I think what we're seeing here from EXO's side, which is kind of, this is like another one of those like developmental turns, but it's like very, very good development because like you're just handling the board, kicking Neadle while, they're already down, and then you're setting up for another Cadrigan, that, it grows exponentially, right? Like you just draw some amount of cards off the first one, then you draw even more cards off the next one, and then we also have the third one, so we're just drawing like basically our own deck. Like it's actually kind of crazy how ahead here the Volibear player is.
Like that's a lot of value engine.
This is only game 1 of the best of 3 here in the first round. This entire tournament will be played in the Swiss style, so Neadle definitely feeling the pressure early on, but I mean, Sam, we've talked about Aspirant's Climb as a way to extend the game. At the moment, nobody's really scoring very many points at all. Aspirant's Climb isn't doing anything.
Not right now. That's kind of... But again, I feel that's probably favoring EXO a little bit here. Again, has already used one of those challenges to remove the board state from Neadle even more, because setting them behind that little bit. And again, maybe because the ceiling's a little higher to win the game, that gives you some time to recover. But you've got a few combat tricks with the Fight or Flight. You've got the Mundo in hand. But again, I'm a bit worried for Needle's ability to get out on the board and keep something on, because yes, you could drop something like the Thousand-Eyed Watcher. Yes, you could drop something like the Mundo. But again, you look over at EXO, there's another challenge. You can just remove the big drop again, and like, it's going to be quite difficult for Neadle to power through some of this really annoying board removal, especially with how mighty the creatures are from EXO right now.
Yeah, and what's kind of weird too is that we're not even like so deep into the game where a card like Mundo would be, just the end-all be-all here.
Yeah.
There's only 6 cards in the trash here for Neadle. So, you play the Mundo this turn, it comes down with 12 might, okay, fine. In that case, we'll see EXO sort of retreat their units. They can pull back, they can afford to. And then after that, what happens? Mundo goes down to 9, and then suddenly we're in the realm of like, okay, well, now I can start to fight with the, my challenge, or, find some way to overpower it, right? Like, Mundo is supposed to be, like, in theory, like, the top end of top ends, and in this matchup, I guess the way the game has played out, it's absolutely just not the case.
Yeah, I mean, at least this is somewhat of beef on the board, but it feels like, Sam, like the entire deck here for Neadle is really designed to be dealing with much smaller creatures than what it's facing right now. You've got -4 coming in from Smokescreen, you've got -2 from Blast Cone Fey, things that would be devastating to a regular unit, but when we're dealing with 9 strength units on the other side, it's barely going to even tickle.
It's tricky, and I think then your response is something like the Mundo play here, and it is a fairly strong Mundo right now, but as you said, there's still that challenge in hand. You can trade out one of these Cadragons and feel happy with it once that drops down from the recycle the next turn. I think Anu's called that perfectly there, and that's going to get very tricky very fast. And then I look at the other side, it's like, look, there isn't the board state to play a wider board to kind of overwhelm the bigger creatures, which is your other way through it. Combat Trick's first bigger board. We saw the attempt at that with all the hidden cards in Bandle City, and it just didn't work out because the Anivia cleared it out, and then the additional board removal in hand is making things tricky. And play another one of those Cadragons, look at the hand, it's already back to being full of some really annoying stuff here, and there's another challenge, so there's more removal, and 2 Cadragons to start fighting with people with them. I am worried for Neadle here on the way out. This Mundo, it's supposed to be your ace in the hole, but I'm looking at the other hand, and that's looking like a dead man's hand. This is poker, and someone's pulled a false flush. A royal
so
there's nothing more frustrating when you're in a position like this, when you can see, as we can see, that sabotage in the hands of X0 to make sure that whatever could conceivably save you can be not only taken out of your hand, but all of your secrets and all of your traps can be laid bare, making it so incredibly hard to come back.
Yeah, information is very crucial when playing, these sort of mind games, especially when you're factoring cards that have hidden things like that. Going back to X0's turn, I'm kind of curious whether or not we should have maybe retreated our units from the Aspirant's Climb, because it is pretty possible for something like the Watcher to come down this next turn, excuse me. But I guess the way that we've actually sequenced everything here is we have challenge available to us, though I suppose challenge is actually not that great here, given that the Watcher is going to sort of shrink down the entire board. Yeah, I mean, I understand the decision here to hold up the challenge over playing the Sabotage this turn, but we're kind of seeing here how Watcher explicitly punishes this line, so maybe this is the turnaround, the inflection point here for Neadle. Maybe we can cobble something together.
Yeah, exactly. Can they make enough off this AoE debuff from the Thousand Tail Watcher, or whether you're obligated to make the move now, right? Before the recycle will start dropping Mundos, and they are going to drop them both in here. This probably does clear out X0, but again, they've still got an Anivia in hand, they've still got another Cadragon in hand. In some ways, I wonder whether, yes, X0 will lose this particular round, but I feel like the battle, the war, I mean, I tried that again, this battle, but the war, there we go, we've got the phrasing correct, is still looking pretty handily in X0's favor, because again, I'm looking at the Anivia, I'm looking at the Cadragon, I'm looking at the challenges. You're not going to keep this Thousand Tail Watcher debuff for more than this turn, so a single punch back I don't think is going to be enough to dismantle the haymaker I'm fearing next turn from X0.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We're trading resource for resource here. Neadle is very far from being able to make this work. I mean, looking at the hand for Neadle, we've got our combat tricks in there. We have got a couple of incredibly important traps against this deck. Fight or flight. Thank you very much, production, for showing us that. The one, trap that can really deal effectively with these big creatures.
Yeah, I'm trying to revisit the turn that Neadle had just here, and I'm wondering if there was another line where we maybe use some of our stupefies to cycle through our deck, increase the amount of cards in our trash, and then not have to use the Watcher, because if you stupefy the Cadragon and the Buccaneer, that brings it down from 14 total to 12 total might. Your Mundo pumps up to 11, and then you could even do some crazy stuff, like you could play the Guerrilla Warfare, buy back some other cards. I don't know. I wonder if there's a line where we didn't have to use the Watcher. That's something that I'll think about, over the course of the next few turns, because Watcher trading here with the 2 units only doesn't feel like enough oomph for how powerful the card actually is.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you, though. I do grant the Stupefy, because they're reactions, theoretically you can then kind of bait out some attacks on the Mundo and use the Stupefies to amp the might enough to keep it alive. So maybe that's the thought process, saying, look, I can use the Stupefies in your turn, use that as reaction to try and keep people on board. In fact, there you go. There is that massive drop to try and potentially get some ways to keep this alive. We'll see whether it's going to be enough, as they'll see what's in hand, will Exo, and say, I see what the response is here, and whether that changes the thought process for Exo.
Yeah, it's a real shame to not have that ambiguity still left in play, because that's so much a part of what the TEEMO deck would otherwise be trying to work with. But of course, we've got to take in the big picture as well, as the hand gets crushed down, resources favoring Exo massively, and most importantly, Exo is way ahead on points right now. So if anything, it feels like Neadle is just treading water here, trying to at least do a little bit of damage before what's seemingly getting inevitably overrun.
My worry here as well is like, well, actually, what creatures have you got in hand? Have you got anything worth playing right now? Like, I'm seeing a lot of reactions, and like, you've got a Mundo and a Dream right now.
Yeah, the Ember Monk's the only thing you've got left in play at all, but I don't see there being too much more going on. We've got challenges out of Wazoo, we've got card draw coming as well. We've even got some higher top end, which we haven't even gotten the chance to play yet. The Magma Worm, to be able to just, if you needed any more pressure, it provides that in spades.
Yeah, especially if you start doing things like Magma Worm into Cardigan, into Anivia, into whatever boards that you've got. Well, we'll all jump on this particular battlefield, and you kind of just have to cry and deal with it. There's not a lot you get to do about that.
Yeah, at this point, I'm not even sure. I think we've entered the phase of the game that I like to call like the ham sandwich time, where one of the players could win with literally anything, even a ham sandwich. And given the total domination of Aspirant's Climb and the amount of might that we're threatening to put into the Bandle Tree, like we might just be good to go. The third Fight or Flight, maybe. I don't even think the third Fight or Flight gives us like weird options to like, okay, maybe like, push back 2 of your units, or maybe I'll have my Ember Monk in play and I can fight over like the Blazing Scorcher, things like that. It's gonna be a really cheesy line if Neadle is actually able to muster something up, but that's gonna have to score 5 points in total, and I don't think there's enough cheese in the deck to do that, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's trying to think if there's any lines you can run with just getting a load of hidden cards down to the Bandle Tree, if you can manage to force your way in there. And I'm looking through the deck list, and I'm not seeing huge amounts. Maybe a way to stack up some Mundo stuff. They are going to run into the Bandle Tree now and see what they get up. And again, they will hide a couple cards and use that as a potential way out. But feels a bit paper tigery, Anu, Counterfeit. I'm not sure those hidden cards are going to dissuade Exo from their game plan particularly here.
Well, I mean, let's take it to big picture here, because it feels like at this point where there's really no reason for Exo to need to ever go back to the Bandle Tree. I mean, at this point they're just blowing up everything that Neadle has for the fun of it, but they're ahead on points. It doesn't matter how much of a great defense you put up a Bandle Tree if you're behind the in the tempo of the game.
Yeah, and the recipe here of just holding entirely on one battlefield while your opponent is also doing the same doesn't really advance your tempo. So yeah, this is an interesting recipe. I mean, now we're going to see what this challenge come down. So maybe Volibear fighting against something like the Mundo, and Volibear having deflect 2 makes the stupefies so bad. Like, you could theoretically win this exchange here, but it's like you would basically shoot yourself in the foot and not have a chance to come back in later stages of the game. So, I guess we're going to fire the Stupefies off on the Cadrigan, so maybe we can get confirmation on what is fighting what here.
Does look like it's going to be the Cadrigan.
Okay.
Yes, I think that's a reasonable assumption. Okay, so there's a couple more cards in hand. Hopefully the challenge going alright at least. I mean, I still don't think this opens the door to actually getting onto the Aspirant's Climb, but at least it's a small sliver of satisfaction. We look at the comparison between the hands here, and it's it's ridiculous the level of resources that are available on one side versus the other.
I mean, yeah,
Right,
and that's after dropping a Volibear too. Like, that's not a cheap card to get out.
Well, gentlemen, I think at this point we'll of course keep an eye out for for things developing here, but it seems to be pretty much a done deal, just with EXO trying to run through as many cards as possible. Since we've got a few moments to let the rest of the game play out, what are you guys' sort of feelings coming out of this first game, particularly for the potential for Neadle to come back in game 2?
Okay.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because if game 2 goes exactly like this, I mean, I think one thing that was very critical here to EXO's success was just like the turn 1 mobilize. It really sort of like kicked off the fireworks to enable the turn 2 Scorcher. So it really, I feel like it depends on how. A lot of this feels like it's out of TEEMO's control, where like if the Volibear engine gets to go online unchecked, you're just going to struggle no matter what. So from TEEMO's perspective, I feel like you're just going to need a lot more units in play earlier, and those units do exist in the deck, but we just didn't see them this game. Instead, this makes me actually wonder if we should have focused more on sending back the Mundo and prioritize our early game instead of try to win out on the late game. But certainly whatever happened this game, you cannot afford to have it happen again.
Yeah, no, I was about to completely agree with you there. Like, I see what the thought process with the Mundo, but at that point, you just need a better start, because actually, EXO got off to a really good ramp start, and it wasn't really threatened by Neadle getting a particularly great board state. It didn't have a particularly scary mid-game. And look, maybe on the sideboard, dropping in a Singularity, maybe picking another Mundo up in there to give you some security late might give you some options, but I think a lot of it just has to be around those first 2 turns and a good mulligan to just give you better board state, because actually EXO, once they got rid of that initial board state, haven't really been threatened since there, and that's it.
Yeah, it's not great. As we can see from Needle's sideboard, you can point out the Singularity. I know, tell us if we're if we're missing anything here, but this don't seem like tools that can swing this matchup dramatically. Gust presumably is not going to be working on anything particularly significant. Singularity does some damage, but Mind Splitter, Dr. Mundo, the high-end stuff, it didn't feel like it was a difference maker in this particular matchup.
Yeah, I think at least the Mind Splitters will be an upgrade to other cards in the deck. Mind Splitter being able to like take out some of the top end without actually having to deal with it in play.
You'd have to kill it, yeah.
Yeah, but like I would definitely not look to bring the third Mundo in. It seems like it's a bit too much of the same effect, and I would prefer to see us sort of like diversify our angle here. Looking at the Volibear side, we do see the Warwick and the Flurry of Blades. That's kind of a cool combo. Stormbringer, more copies of Volibear. I'm not really fans of these. Honestly, I would be shocked if we don't bring in like more than one card here from EXO side, if even that. Which means, just naturally the Volibear game plan that we used in game 1 will rely again on game 2, and it looked pretty good in game 1, so I expect it to be, good in game 2 as well.
I think I'm there with you. I mean, like, maybe there's a world where you say, actually, if they do start dropping a lot more cantrips, and maybe you see the sideboard and you think, maybe some Singularity options, maybe an Unyielding Spirit gets dropped in somewhere just for, like, that little bit of protection, but I don't know how necessary that is, because I actually just feel like, just matchup-wise, I'm not sure how easy this TEEMO deck is how easy a time this TEEMO deck is in general is gonna have versus this Volibear, unless you get off to a much, much faster start. Maybe I'm over-egging it off one bad game, but I'm not seeing the easiest lines here for the TEEMO into this matchup in particular.
Yeah, you're definitely not going to be able to fight a fair fight here. And when I say that, it seems like a weird fair fight, because we're saying like, okay, well, one person has like 9 might units, and so like, in the realm of fair, like, do you also have 9 might units? You don't, right? So winning that quote-unquote fair fight, I don't think it's there for TEEMO. So what I would really like to see in this game number 2, I would really like to see aggressive mulligans, hit your early 2-cost units like Traveling Merchant, like Ravenbloom Student, and then, focus on building up your rune count by using TEEMO's ability so that you can sandbag your Thousand-Tailed Watcher after forcing your opponent to make a move, right? Like, you want to, just do the usual, just want to curve out low into high. And the good news is also this game, we won't have to worry about Aspirant's Climb. So like the stock strategy of cheap into big is going to be, it's going to be a bit more viable this time. Yeah.
And again, I think I really like that calling that Thousand Tail Watcher, because you were a little bit dubious about the play that it felt like a desperation play. Look, we're going to do the Mundo and Thousand Tail Watcher that got you a battlefield for like a turn or two, but it was a stalling maneuver. It wasn't really a game-winning one, which is what that needed to be. And I think for the next time, you want that hit to be a lethal one if it comes around to it next time around. I think I'm there with you. Pete, you got anything you want to see from this one yourself? Is there anything particular lines you're kind of happy with? Or any, I suppose, from the Volibear perspective, you're thinking, look, actually, I want to, what are they going to need to close out the series a bit here as well?
Well, I think from what we've seen from this matchup before, it's always been a David versus Goliath. We saw people were very excited to have this matchup go, and I think the reason why is because there are some really terrible hands this Volibear deck can draw. Like, there's so much top end here. So ultimately, if we get bad draws from Exo, they can't do anything for a couple of turns, and we see Neadle able to pull ahead and get these, lockdown battlefields early on, I think that's the kind of game we need to see. And we do see on the left-hand side, that's not a good hand for Exo.
Oh, baby.
Yeah, double Dead Bloom, Dazzling Aurora, Sky Splitter. Your average, the energy cost is like 1 million. So you're definitely going to be putting 2 cards back here. On the TEEMO side, of note, we have Obelisk of Power and Grove of the God Willow, so we'll slowly figure out how that changes the texture of this game. But on the TEEMO side, again, we have Nocturne, not great in our opening hand. Let's put that on the bottom. No turn 1 play besides our Chosen Champion is a little bit of an eyebrow raiser. So I would like to also put back 1 more card in the hopes of drawing something that we can, slam on turn 2 and use to get more points. Maybe the Sprite Mother is good enough for that. I don't know, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous here again. Like, we'll see what the Mulligans end up with, because it's not the fastest hand from the team, and one of our concerns was the fact that, look, you need to be faster. Yes, it's not the best draw from the volley. He's going to get rid of one of those big drop creatures. He's going to hold on to the Dazzling Aurora, which, fair enough, it's a big win con card, even if it is a bit expensive. You need to get rid of some of the 1 million point costs and hope you draw a bit better here, but we'll see where that ends up. I will note, though, because you've got the Obelisk of Power, you have got that little bit of ramp in there to work with, though perhaps the TEEMO is going to try and play for the draw off of the what? I'm trying to remember the name of it again. Go over the God Willow. I was going to call it the Watcher's Willow. It was like the Watcher's on the zone, and therefore, I went in that direction with my brain, but no, it is of course that one there to work with.
Well, we didn't get any of the early playable units. At least we did get. Yeah, we've at least got a stack deck to be able to get in something else. But she said the Obelisk of Power means that at least we've got like 1 extra. So the stack deck kind of coming out for free here. Maybe we can find in one of those 2 drops and get the engine running. We have got Mobilize on Exo's side of things, so there's only a small window of opportunity for Neadle to work with.
Yeah, and looking at the mulligans here, we did put the Nocturne back. We also put the Sprite Mother back, and I would have liked to maybe put the Ember Monk back instead. We don't really have very many hidden cards to sort of leverage alongside the Ember Monk. Sprite Mother also just lets us capture a point on turn 2 with the ready token that comes into play. And yeah, that's interesting. We'll see how it plays out here. The problem that I'm seeing right now is we don't have a unit in play on the board on turn 1, and that to me is concerning. I feel like we might be setting ourselves up for a repeat of the last game.
That's exactly it, right? Like, we saying, look, that Volibear hand kind of sucks. Pete called it. Correct. It's not the best hand, but hey, on the other side, like, is this going to be fast enough for the side of Neadle? And again, they've switched in the singularities. Look, there they are in hand. They've got bigger damage kill cards to try and help manage some of the bigger ticket creatures, but they're going to have to pull a lot of weight here, because it's not like Neadle is going to be accelerating out of the gate particularly fast here. At least they are finally getting a creature drop, but that's not exactly the most accelerated start of all time, and we've all kind of raised our eyebrows at that at this point.
I mean, I do understand the reason to put the TEEMO in hand, not put into play. You don't want to use your runes there to, you want to invest in the mana so that you have a better late game, right? And I think maybe that's kind of what I'm picking up here. Like, if I put myself in the seat of Neadle, what is going on in my head? The singularities, putting the TEEMO in the hand, all these clues sort of lead me to believe that Neadle might be trying to actually just play like tit for tat. We want to fight that fair fight, and I do think we're a little bit under-equipped to play it, but at least the plays up until this point are consistent with that line, so we'll see if it's going to be good enough here.
Well, the big thing that happened last time around was, of course, seeing, the overrun on the battlefield, which was ostensibly controlled by Neadle, which meant that you're no longer ticking up ahead of your opponent, but instead fighting from behind. Brazen Buccaneer, Sam, you're calling that out from before, getting that early acceleration into the field. And of course, we've also got pretty good backup for it there as well. We've still got the Void Seeker ready to rock, if we need any additional shenanigans.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. And the Anivia's in hand as well to potentially deal with a bigger board state. But again, Anna was calling it tit for tat, but the problem is doing tit for tat versus XO is just allowing them to warm up to what will start becoming haymakers. And yeah, we're not quite there yet, and yeah, we're starting to get some points on the board, but again, how many turns deep are we before Neadle got a point? I think this personally has been too slow. Yes, with the hand you had to play it a bit slow. I understand the decision making with the cards that you've drawn. My issue is, in the grander scheme of things, I still think this might be a touch slow. Finally starting to get a bit more board state, finally starting to develop that little bit. There goes that hidden card. Something to work with here. But there's all these Dazzling Aurora things and all the rest of it you can still do. I'm seeing double Void Seeker, I'm seeing some big drops, and I don't think XO is being punished too hard here for waiting to get to some serious rune counts before dropping any real creatures.
There we go. Aurora to the field. And last time round, we saw the game was won pretty comfortably by XO without the central card that defines the deck. Now he's going to be able to get, unlimited creatures for free. If you couldn't outvalue him before, you sure as heck can't now.
Yeah, this will be interesting too, because I think in Chaos Mind, you don't actually really even have good answers to. Oh, wow, that's a crazy flop. Okay, wow, yeah. Is the Magma Worm a 1 of 2? I'm pretty sure it is, right? Oh no, it's a 2 of. Okay, all right, that's fine, fair. Okay, allowed. Yeah, but we saw what happened in game 1, right? You just played big units and you won. Now this time you get to play big units and you get to put even more big units. You're doing twice the amount of damage. So, I don't know. How are we even handling the Aurora? I don't actually think we have a way to get it off the board at this point, do we?
No, I don't think
see one.
We haven't got anything sideboarded for this specifically. I mean, we've got the Singularity. We've got 2 Singularities, so we can deal at least with the smaller parts. The Brazen Buccaneer is great for the Singularity. You can take it out with one shot, but the bigger stuff, like the Magworm, is just beyond our reach in terms of removal.
You're realistically trading on that point. And look, even in hand, you've still got the Dead Bloom Perimeter, which has got the deflect on, so you're even going to have to pay a bit more to deal with that. And I'm still worried about, I'm just having a quick look through Needle's deck, and I'm saying, is there actually anything in there that can get rid of this Dazzling Aurora? Because I think that value engine at this point in the game is such a problem, because I'm looking at the other side, and the board state is... It's the same number of creatures. You aren't looking at a particularly great amount of board state here.
Looking at the lines here, I think one of the issues that I'm seeing is that we don't actually... So, no matter what, the Magma Worm is just going to be making it to the next turn. I guess you could do some shenanigans, like flip the TEEMO, reveal something, maybe hope to hit a Nocturne that pumps up your... Oh, it's Consult the Past. Okay.
Where's the draw?
Oh, we have 2 of them. Okay, I see now. All right, so I guess we're looking to see what other options we might have. This does notably pump the Ember Monk in base up to 6 might, which means we can crash into the Buccaneer now.
Yeah.
And I guess, maybe this isn't looking so bad. We did pick up a copy of Fight or Flight earlier, which we can use to protect ourselves from the Magma Worm, but what we know that Neadle doesn't is that in addition to the Dazzling Aurora, there's also a Dead Bloom Predator that's going to make its way onto the battlefield,
and
too.
an Anivia, and they're all coming in ready. There's a lot of worries here. The only thing I will say is there is a potential line with the double Singularity and the Thousand-Tailed Watcher. So if you can get those debuffs on, so even some of those 9-might creatures are in kill threat range if you combo up well. It's an expensive set of removal, but you can theoretically get rid of some of these normal behemoths as they are dropped, but it is going to be pretty expensive removal, make no mistake about it.
Well, I mean, I suppose the good news here is there's at least a possibility for Neadle to be able to get seriously ahead of EXO in terms of actual points scored. Because, it's going to be like a lot of other games you see in something like Magic the Gathering and things where, you can't beat EXO in terms of his creatures. All you've got to do is try and end the game before this value engine just completely runs you over.
Yeah, where's my Cyclonic Rift? Where's my full board wipes? Give me removal!
That's the thing, though. I don't think removal is what you need here. I think you need speed.
Yeah, true. Anu, at this point, and you're playing Needle's deck, what are you even hoping to top deck at this point? Like, I sort of see the Thousand Tail Watcher. I see the singularities. I can see, like, the formings of an expensive line there to deal with what could be some really scary, dazzling Aurora drops. I'm not sure what else you are trying to pick up here that saves this particularly easily from this point. Because, again, it's 2-1 in points. That's it right now.
Whoa. Okay, yeah. I mean, that's tricky. I was going to say maybe something like Dr. Mundo or additional copies of Watcher, because I think we're at the stage of the game where we're like, we just need to keep slamming threat after threat after threat after threat. And this turn cycle was certainly interesting. Just 4 energy here for the Consult to Past. Not exactly developing the board in the way that I'd like to see, but I suppose, this does capture the point here, and maybe we just pull back from the Grove, because I don't think we're actually going to be able to keep the Ember Monk around through the Magma Worm. But to answer your question, yeah, I think we just need bigger creatures. We have a small point lead, so maybe we can take like 1 turn off for development, and then if we use that turn to play small creatures, we can pair that alongside something like the Thousand Tail Watcher ability to sort of take down some of the monsters that EXO's putting into play.
Yeah, and again, like, you managed to abuse the Sprite Mother to at least get a point here off the temporary little... I don't remember the name, but it's just a Sprite, which would make sense considering it's a Sprite Mother. And that gets you something, and I kind of agree with you, Anna. If you can just get a little bit of something on this next turn, take that little bit of space to get more on the board, maybe there's a way out.
Well, I mean, if we were in a situation where Magma Worm wasn't on the board, you could conceivably, fight or flight whatever's going towards the Grove of the Gold Willow and hold on for another point. But we know that, you're going to get blown up here by the Void Seeker, and we're presumably going to be playing something else as well. Yep, fight or flight. There we go. At least push them out of range, but at this point, you know that you've got nothing left to work with. You've got no runes left live at all. At least, you get out of dodge, but you've now given up ground, and if it's anything like Game 1, Neadle may well never get that ground back again in a serious way.
At least he keeps the Ember Monk alive. Like, yes, it costs you the hidden card, but that's partly why you're running the Ember Monk with these kind of combos, because that's what the whole card is designed to do. On the other hand, you have forced that out. You force them off the battlefield, so they're not getting that extra point, so they aren't even getting that additional kind of like little bit of breathing space. Is it fair? We're starting to get more and more cards in the graveyard, though, so if you do start pulling things like the Mundo with those Thousand Tail Watchers with the double singularity, you are maybe starting to get to the point where you can maybe tango with some of those bigger creatures. There's the Dead Bloom Predator immediately dropped on the battlefield, though, and beginning to make their own power moves as EXO.
Oh yeah, and I like this too a lot. Just not keeping the Magma Worm, or not using it to take over the Grove here, instead just keeping it in base, keeping it safe. Now, what Neadle does have available to them is access to Singularity plus the Blast Cone Fade to get rid of the Magma Worm. That's probably something that you have to do this turn, because let's see, next turn, if you don't, then you have no idea what kind of crazy units are in the hand here for EXO, and if any of those come into play from hand to base and then straight to battlefield, like, it's just like not a good look here. So it's kind of weird, but I do sense some urgency in having to get rid of this Magma Worm, and let's see what happens after that.
I was with you. I don't think it ends up getting exposed, just because if we stall out at this kind of point here, 2-3 points, like we saw in Game 1, this is favoring EXO so much, because Neadle, even with the singularities, is always going to be behind, and more behind every single round that passes.
At least you've got more in hand this time, because you've got double Thousand Tail Watchers, you've got double Singularity. There is a little bit more to work with there, but I agree. need to start upping the tempo up here a bit, because otherwise between the Dazzling Aurora and the Magma Worm, you're having a lot of big creatures drop readied and willing to go faster than you can remove them, even with all of those tools you've got in hand.
Neadle's decisions need to be big at this point, or yeah, well, they're just going to end up being completely rolled over. It does seem like, you know, as was being mentioned before, that Neadle didn't necessarily come into this first match with a deck spec for dealing with this particular strategy. We do just remember, though, you know, we've 7 rounds of Swiss taking place, so even if this matchup looks really rough for Neadle, hopefully future matches will be a little easier.
Oh, this is interesting. Okay. So we're just going to play Watcher to base here. Play the Blastcone Phase. Shrink the Dead Bloom down to 3.
Oh,
and
aggressive.
then... Yeah, the Ember Monk can...
Remove.
Crash in. Alright. Hey, this is not bad at all. We go up to 5 points now. And we also have access to Guerrilla Warfare to buy back, fight, or flight for some final push here. So I actually see the vision now with what Neadle has. I don't know if we were supposed to, if we recycled an extra rune for the deflect when Blastcone Fae shrunk the Deadbloom Predator, but I'm going to assume that it's taken care of. So we have 7 energy here. We're going up to 9. There's a world where we could actually do the thing. There is a world where we could do the thing.
They managed to rescue a way out, and I think we were both kind of, well, I think all of us were a little bit like, I'm not sure about this, but yeah, they managed to force X0 to start making some decisions at the very least. You can't play slow too much longer here. They are going to have to start getting some creatures onto these battlefields and answering this move from Neadle. They've got some ways to do it. I will note there's a Sabotage in hand to potentially get rid of something like one of those singularities, maybe get rid of that Guerrilla Warfare. Let's see what the thought process is there. But immediately going to start trading some of this stuff out, and there we go. That'll be a take on the God Willow. I'll trade out there with the Anivia on that one, and immediately those creatures go.
Yeah, they're both, well, the thing is, at least we've got the Watcher. There is the Sabotage to make sure there will be no surprises coming. And you can see the Sabotage is being looked over very carefully, but God, there's so little room for Neadle to work with. And to be able to shift off, I mean, he's still ahead on points, or they're still ahead on points right now for the time being, but this next turn needs to be huge.
I would actually like to see the Guerrilla Warfare get taken here off of this Sabotage. I think the Singularity is just too expensive to actually matter here for Neadle. Like, yes, you can combine Singularity with some of the units in play and in hand to get rid of the board temporarily, but the Guerrilla Warfare represents a
win con.
Just like a win con, but then also just like a better way to sort of handle what's on board and in play than the inefficient Singularities.
Another Cadrigan. Was that Dazzling Aurora? Was that a Dazzling Aurora drop again of a Cadrigan? That is ridiculous. Yes. And double Dazzling Aurora in hand. You could just make all the cards drop if you want.
You need more Auroras in your life if you're gonna be a real Aurora deck. Ay. All right, what we got? I mean, it looks like the Watcher's really the only thing that's going to be at all, well, I say surprising. Of course, the hand has been sabotaged, so there will be very few surprises coming in.
Yeah, is there... again, maybe you do just have to go for some very expensive ways out. You've got to Stupefy, maybe to pull for some more draws and look for a Mundo or something that might allow you to hold onto a battlefield somewhere. You've still got 5 points to work with, so if you can find a way to pair those Singularities up with a 1,000-tail Watcher again, you might be able to get a little bit more space on a board and start contesting a bit easy. But again, I am a little nervous about the challenge in hand. I'm nervous about the fact that you've got more Dazzling Auroras for more draw. Like, and that Magma Worm is still on the board. You are still going to drop some of these massive creatures and immediately get value out of them. You're not going to have that much time to respond here.
With the current setup, though, I think this turn should start off with something like a Stupefy because the hand is not really set up to do too much here. The good news, though, is that we do have Mundo as a pretty good out. We've got 10 cards in the trash right now, so that is something that you could look to draw towards. Looks like instead we're going to be spending a lot of energy this turn to play the second 1,000-tail Watcher. And this line is also fine as well. It will clear the board and put you up to 7 points, which I think is going to be pretty important if you're trying to like cheese that final point in the game.
That's the only way the points are gonna come. There can be no notion of fairness when you're about, you know, a 1 foot tall Yordle versus a Titanic Bear God. But let's see where it ends
Is
up
that
going.
a regular issue in your day-to-day? You know, like, Bear God
day,
versus...
man, every day. I'm like,
versus
I look at the mirror,
the
I'm like,
League of Legends equivalent of Satan, quite literally. Like this feels like a relatively religious sort of like there's a certain like divine conflict going on here.
oh boy, it's gonna need some divine intervention for Neadle, but there we go. So we've got the Seeker to take out one. I think the problem is it just feels like with the Magawam out, it doesn't seem like there's any way you're going to be able to, if you're only on one battlefield, as will be the case here, that you're going to be able to hold it and try and finish out the game.
The way this game has been playing ever since that magma worm hit the table, it's just felt like Needle's kind of like been dropped in the ocean, is struggling to like, you know, breathe
Stay
for
afloat,
air, and then every turn after that is just like another big unit that says like, hey, you know, you don't get to play the game if you don't beat this. You don't get to play the game if you don't beat this. You don't get to play the game if you don't beat this. You know, and so I'm actually impressed that Needle is kind of in this situation where we're like 1 point away, but that last point is very deceptive. You know, I feel like
how do you get there?
Yeah, right. Like, what is the plan here? Because you know what you could do here is maybe take a turn off, try to get to. Well, even with 2 turns, you cannot get to 12 energy to double singularity. So
it's hard.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see what the next few draws are, but it is tricky.
I completely agree. And like, look, and the other thing is like, you can't cheat the final point the way you can up until match point. You have called Uno. Someone has said you're at set point, but you have still got to claim that final point somehow. And it's just a little bit harder with the way that Riftbound's mechanics work. That last point has to be a very clearly 1 point with you controlling the battlefield for that full turn type example. And that's not going to be easy when you are starting to pull some challenges. There's another magma worm in hand. Even if you get rid of the one that's causing you issues, you can just drop another one. Like, I'm struggling to see how you're going to manage the engine that is continuing to churn right now, Visit EXO, but we've said that already. At least, again, you are forcing some answers. I just don't know how many more times Neadle can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point you were just playing, hoping that somehow EXO doesn't have the removal to be able to completely ruin your day on all these sites. As it was, yeah, the battlefield's just going to get completely run over. Neadle, I think, should be commended for getting as close as they were here to at least, you know, play the line that gave them the possibility of being able to cheat out a second game win, but the odds were always going to be against them.
Oh, there goes another magma worm. That's so frustrating.
There's 2 of them.
Aurora. Oh, yes. I will hold on the Star Wars references for now. I know that's unusual for me of all things. There goes another one. And yeah, these board states are looking pretty damn miserable. I think this might be close to it.
Okay, I mean, Blast Cone Fey means you don't lose this turn. That may have been like maybe one of the better draws here.
Yeah.
But in order to survive, like, oh, actually, no. Yeah. Okay, in order to survive though, like you have to commit 3 runes, and then what is your play for the turn after, right? And so
another blast cone. But then again, like, you still gonna have more drops on the Dazzling Aurora. Like, you're not dealing with that. You're not removing any of these creatures in the way you absolutely have to in terms of like just getting them into the graveyard. And I'm still concerned. And again, these singularities are sight in hand for how long? And they've not managed to get rid of any creatures either. You do need to start getting some of this damage down somewhere, somehow.
I just think that ultimately Needles you're right, just didn't have good answers to this kind of deck at all. So, EXO certainly starting off the tournament pretty darn well. As we said, there's a lot more Swiss to go after this. If you win your first round, of course, you would go on and go even further. But there is our little Blast Cone Fey friend, just to provide a little bit more time for Needle on stream, if nothing else.
yeah, so Stupefy and Blast Cone Fey are going to give Cadrigan -3 might. That gives it just enough for the Singularity to clear both the Buccaneer and the Cadrigan, which means we're not going to double hold, we're not going to double score. We will have to deal with the board on the God Willow
Oh boy.
next turn, but right.
Yeah.
Forgot about it. Magma Worm plus Volibear. Yeah, so this is
Yeah, I'm gonna say,
lethal on board. Lethal on board. All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, I was like, I feel like there's still a Volibear we've not considered. Yeah, that's hard. And again, you've already got this Flex on that. We've already said the Volibear is a bit of a nightmare. Yeah, draws some more to work with, pulls a couple back. This is tough because the thing is, even if there is now an answer, I think X0 is actually playing this quite cleverly here by just saying, look, I've got double Magma Worm back in base. Do you have the removal for that? Because I can now play this slower. I can continue to grind it out, and I don't have to risk it by keeping those out on the battlefields. There's the reveal of the hand, and you just see, oh god, more challenges.
Aye. All right, well, it's a shame, but I think it is pretty much as we would have expected coming to this one. I do admire that X0, despite knowing you're coming into this one pretty darn favored overall, made sure to cross the T, dot the I's, make sure that there's no windows of opportunity for Neadle to be able to even sneak out a single game over the series.
Agreed. And again, part of it... Again, I wonder whether we would be having a different conversation if we'd seen Needle's deck play out a little bit faster. But again, we didn't see the best 1 and 2 turn drops there. And that will be the victory in the end for X0. No more answers for Neadle. And I'm left wondering a little bit, but the end result was it still X0 playing the Juggernaut-style gameplay, get to your big creatures, and then just play for these imposing drops all the time with the Dazzling Aurora. It's a nasty deck when it gets rolling, and both games there wasn't really much in the way to stop it, Anu.
Yeah, I'm actually really happy every time I get to see like Volibear do its thing. I think it's a very underrepresented archetype that does have a lot of firing power. When you have a very, very strong late game in the form of something like Dazzling Aurora, but also because you're in red, you get to play, good removal spells like Void Seeker, and in this deck specifically, like Sky Splitter, right? A challenge too. It's a very it's refreshing to see when everyone is expected to bring Kai'Sa, Yi, and these sorts of decks to the table.
How fast can you go? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. And I'm actually kind of curious to see how Volibear will line up against decks like Yi, because Yi has turned from something of like a turtle deck into like almost a Dazzling Aurora deck in and of itself. And I think going heads up in the matchup, I'd almost say that Volibear is just better at doing the ramp thing than Yi is, and Dazzling Aurora is just good against Kai'Sa in general. So who knows, maybe the metagame is like in a position where we'll be seeing a lot more Volibear. I mean, the theory lines up. We'll have to see if execution also does the same.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious to see how the different matchups come in. Certainly from what we saw, Sam, from the previous one, it didn't feel like the TEEMO deck was spec to deal with that kind of, mountainous level of deck. But I think against smaller creatures that are more regular deck size, where you're dealing with 4 and 5 strength creatures, that could be an absolute nightmare to play against. Yeah,
it really could. And I've just gotten a little stat block from our producer as well. Shout out to Artrix, otherwise known as Jacob, otherwise known as the GOAT, who's putting all of this together, doing a wonderful job with the rest of the crew here on Riftlab. But they've gotten our stats of our deck list and our champions leading the way. 19 Kaisers, 11 Masters, and 9 TEEMOs make up our top 3, with a little bit, I'll note, in there of things like the Darius, actually. And again, I wonder a little bit about whether Darius might be an interesting one to keep our eyes on as well. It's been a bit of a Riftlab special. We already chatted about it kind of in the pre-show coming into the series as well. I wonder whether those Baited Hook players just playing a wider board and continuing a different kind of value engine might be another way to try and deal with some of these decks. We saw that manage Kai'Sa before as well, so more TEEMO to keep our eyes on, more than I expected actually. And then that Baited Hook play, which can be pretty fun as well. Anything in there, Anu, you keeping your eyes on?
I think Darius is the one archetype that I am actually shocked didn't see more representation in the Chinese regionals that we watched over the past month or so. It's a deck that I think lines up pretty well against Kai'Sa, and even like against Yi, you have a lot of fair game. When we watched Prismaticism back in Riftlab 1, we sort of saw, in the top 8 and top 4, Prismaticism just took apart Yi without much effort, and then played against Set in the finals, and that was that. But Darius has done really well in this circuit. I think also, you know, with Ganstrax being like 16-0 across the 4 clashes,
it's ridiculous.
Really just goes to show like this archetype has a lot of. I don't even want to call it like underrated, because I feel like a lot of the best players are aware and cognizant that it exists. So I'm kind of curious to see how it's going to perform this weekend, especially given its, you know, low representation and, you know, performance in the Chinese regionals and things like that.
Yeah, but the representation here has always been good, at least in terms of our top 8 stuff, mainly because our winner has always, in fact, been the Darius. 16-0 again. Like, there is that kind of extra angle to keep our eyes on. That will be fun to track. Again, I'm also excited to see where things like that TEEMO play out. I'd love to see TEEMO play potentially a more typical game state. I don't think we got to see the TEEMO actually do the thing, the way we saw the Volibear do that massive ramping, drop a juggernaut every turn type thing, and that could be a lot of fun.
I think you can forgive, though, you know, as we kind of take in the big picture here. Again, this is the 7 rounds of Swiss here. Honestly, you know, the TEEMO deck in the previous round did actually anticipate what they would be playing against accurately, and saying, you know what, there's not going to be a lot of Volibear decks here. I believe there's 2 Volibear decks in the entire competition. So to play against them when you've got basically a crap matchup against them in the first round is a kick in the teeth. But I still feel like, you know, the reason we're seeing so much TEEMO representation is its matchup against the rest of the field will be tremendously better.
Yeah, I think if I'm playing TEEMO, I'm happy to play against Yi. I think the Kai'Sa matchup is a little bit dicey. You know, you really have to find units that can stick on the board, but overall, you know, I think the archetype is also just really, really fun to play, and that alone is enough of a draw for me. You know, just like, you know, all right, tricks and traps and drawing cards and bouncing all your stuff, like, we could cobble something together here with it for sure.
All right, well, general friends, with our first series done on stream, we are only just getting started here today. We'll be taking a little bit of an extended break while the other series tie up, but that's only the first game of the second Riftlab trials. So stay tuned. We'll be back as soon as possible with more fantastic games of Riftbound.